I'm thinking about my story from last month about Shlomo Mansour, who is the oldest hostage currently being held in Gaza. As a young child, survived the bloody Iraqi Farhud. He went on to live another 70 years in the kibbutz. Then at age 85, was grabbed in his pajamas and violently shoved to his car and driven into Gaza on October 7th. I get emotional when I think about this guy. I'm sorry. It's like, it really affected me. Like talking to his daughter and his grandson, like this buff kid who's like a personal trainer now, talking about how his Saba, his fondest memory is building a SpongeBob SquarePants doll out of wood with him in the workshop. It was just, it got you, you know? My name is Joel Chaushu, and I'm the Quebec correspondent for the Canadian Jewish News. I think these stories are worth telling. We can do that with your help. Visit the cjn.ca/donate to support our work. You'll get a quarterly magazine and a tax receipt to boot. What's not to love?
We have Angel out in the community who's been removing this graffiti. I know the commander of the West District Station, who's very responsive to the community out there and cares. He has taken steps to make sure this graffiti is removed.
That's the voice of a senior Winnipeg police inspector at a news conference 2 weeks ago, where they announced the arrest of a young local man charged with 26 counts of spraying swastikas and other neo-Nazi graffiti in a Jewish area known as Charleswood. The spree began last fall and continued right through Hanukkah and ended in the new year when he was arrested. The 19-year-old suspect was caught thanks to video surveillance. The police in Winnipeg say they were very concerned about this graffiti. Since October 7th, hate crimes in Winnipeg hit a historic high. In 2023, there were 46 cases. They charged the man with mischief because they didn't feel graffiti met the high barrier to charge him with hate crimes, as it wasn't a Jewish community center, just a rec center run by the city. Did you catch when the police officer said, "We have an angel in the community who's removing the graffiti"? Even though it's the city of Winnipeg's job to do it, she was praising Avrom Charach, a volunteer graffiti buster, a leader in the community. Charach went to clean off some of those recent swastikas on that community center too. By day, he's a finance guy with a property management company, which means he also has a special set of skills to deal with removing graffiti. He knows what solvents to use and what works in bitter cold prairie temperatures. All this came in very handy after Charach got his first call about anti-Semitism 8 months ago. That graffiti read, "Jews kill babies." And since then, he's responded to everything from phone boxes to a Dairy Queen outlet and a North End synagogue that's been covered with black swastikas just ahead of Shabbat.
It does make me feel better after I remove it. It makes me feel annoyed every time I hear about more.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, and made possible in part thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky Gluskin Charitable Foundation. After October 7th, Avrom Charach had a very personal reason for wanting to do something about the explosion of graffiti against Jews in his city. His sister and her family live in Israel, and one of his nephews survived the Nova Music Festival. Charach recently won a medal from the city of Winnipeg for his volunteering. He's still past president of Eitz Chaim Synagogue. He supports the annual Folklorama Multicultural Festival, plus a Jewish folk choir, and his family took in foster kids. No one asked Charach to do this graffiti busting work. He mainly removes graffiti targeting Jews, but he also responds to hate against other minorities. And he's got the support of the city of Winnipeg and the police. This month, he says he has a little bit less to do because it's freezing in Winnipeg, -20, -19, and he says fewer people go out to cause trouble in those temperatures. Plus, his cleaning solvents don't work when it's that cold anyway. Sadly, he's expecting he'll be busier in the spring, although he'd prefer to be out of business altogether. Avrom Charach joins me now from his office in Winnipeg.
Thank you, Ellen.
It's good to meet you. Congratulations on the newfound fame that you have for this initiative that you've started to do to clean up hate of all kinds, but mainly anti-Jewish hate in your city. why did you know about graffiti? What's your background that you had this sort of antenna for graffiti even before this?
Well, I guess I'm in property management, and unfortunately, we've seen graffiti on our buildings occasionally, once or twice inside our buildings, once or twice anti-Semitic inside our buildings. The company I work for is Jewish-owned, and all the senior management are Jewish. But I didn't pay a lot of attention to graffiti until recently. After October 7th, I saw a little bit, and then I guess we can get to how I started the cleanup. But that particular event is what made me, as you say, have my antennae out. I can't drive without watching for graffiti anymore.
So October 7th happened. Did it explode in terms of the quantity and the I guess area where you saw this? What changed with graffiti?
So we didn't see a lot of graffiti in our community, probably because of winter. We're seeing a lot less right now as well. So around the beginning of May to the middle of May last year is when we started to see it. And explode is probably a reasonably good word in some ways, in more or less two parts of the city mostly, very left-wing parts of the city, to say it in some politically correct way.
And where? Like near the university, near what?
Well, not near the University of Manitoba, not too close to University of Winnipeg, more so near in an area in the west end of Winnipeg, they call it. It's kind of in between downtown and what we call River Heights, but it's full of the kinds of people who like to own 100-year-old homes and walk around in Birkenstocks, to say it in a sort of way. That's why I kind of say it's left-leaning.
Okay, and River Heights, for people who don't know, of course, is a very Jewish area.
Yes, so we're talking the most, well, not the most famous piece of graffiti. The one that seems to get out all over is the swastika on the synagogue. That was in a different part of the city. But the Jews kill babies. That's where it all started. And it happened 3 times, and then 2 other slogans on the exact same box. About a block away from the Shaare Zedek synagogue, one of our 2 major synagogues, just on the other side of the river by Misericordia Hospital. And for some reason, someone loves to put slogans up there, and it all started there. The other part of the city where it seems to be happening most is the Market District, as they call it. It's kind of near the Theater District, near City Hall, a place where a lot of people like to hang out at night, where the Fringe Festival is. That's where I got half my graffiti in one night, which was interesting in July. So those are the 2 main areas.
And are things being targeted that are sort of all in 2 or 3 different categories, like you would say a wall, or store windows? Like,
counter to what I've seen from Eastern Canada, stores are not being hit a lot. For some reason, there's respect for stores here, maybe because a lot of them aren't publicly and openly Jewish-Israeli tied. So what you see a lot of is those boxes that they use for hydro or telephone. They make wonderful templates, some on walls, some on signs, a lot on telephone poles, light poles, those kind of poles. I mean, what we did see during the Fringe Festival, I got a whole bunch of the P for parking on meters where they wrote Palestine and above it put free. Now, that stuff is objectionable to you and I. It's not necessarily hate graffiti, but I did take a lot of that off while I was taking off things that certainly wouldn't be characterized as benign by anyone.
But how did you decide that you needed to start doing this?
So we have a few WhatsApp groups in Winnipeg that members of the Jewish community tend to be part of. I can't remember if it was the general discussion or the blue and white. Those are the 2 most active in Winnipeg. Someone had put up a picture of Jews kill babies with 2 stylized S's at the end. It was a Friday, 5 p.m. People were getting all hot under the collar. And we said, just report it to the police. Someone will take care of it. And people were like, I can't stand it, blah, blah, blah. So I finally just said, you know what? It was like 6 p.m. Shabbos wasn't in yet. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get a friend of mine to bring some of the equipment from my office over and we'll clean it off. Whoever wants to come join me can come join me. So my friend came, also Jewish, one of the senior managers here, with some spray paint remover, and we had some other things that we used. And he and I, along with a couple other people who showed up, just took off that one. And of course, what then happened, so it was just, I fell into it because I didn't want people to feel bad over Shabbos. I said, I'll take care of it. You can sleep better tonight. And then before you knew it, there was, tags to Avrom in all the groups and emails coming my way. I even received phone calls.
Tell us now, what was that?
So again, a Friday evening, It happens to be my anniversary. Going out for dinner with my wife, and we're taking the kids and their boyfriends. And I get a call from the executive director of the Jewish Federation. Hi, Avrom. We got a call from a non-Jewish person who was driving by the Ashkenazi shul. It's the oldest synagogue in Winnipeg. It's in North Winnipeg. It's not used a lot. Stately building. Love the inside. Feels like you're in Europe in the 1800s. And there was a swastika on the wall and one on the ground right below it. He said, can you take care of that? I said, you know what? I'll take care of it this weekend. I'll see if I can get to it. I got to go for dinner first. So we're at dinner, and it's bothering me a little bit because it's a shul and Shabbos is coming. And so I said to my wife and the kids, if you don't mind, right after dinner, I'm going to go if anyone wants to come with me. My wife came with me and went for ice cream after we took a swastika off of a shul on Erev Shabbos. But that was my favorite one because I felt good knowing that the next morning, if anyone went to Ashkenazi, they don't have every Shabbos anymore. Sometimes they do. They wouldn't see a swastika. And that's why I do it.
When you say remove it, can you walk me through, Avram, like the technical things? What do you use? A big hose with like a compressed water that you spray to do like a deck? Or
the company that owner is like that, and I'm not sure I can convince our owner to buy. I saw this beautiful laser remover that only costs about $15,000 or $20,000 Canadian. We don't have enough graffiti on our properties to make it worth me buying that. So we just have a spray that we pick up from a local janitorial supply, actually owned by First Generation, but it was a survivor who opened that company. So I take the spray, sometimes add a little more water, sometimes use the old magic eraser, sometimes use a wire brush. So you spray the surface. Brick is really hard. So the Ashkenazi shul was not so easy to do as compared to some of these hydro boxes. You spray it on, sometimes the stuff just comes off. Like with a paper towel, you can wipe it off on certain things. Some of the new devices that Hydron people are putting up are meant to be graffiti resistant. Otherwise, you sometimes sit there with a wire brush and scrub, and you let it sit for a few minutes and wipe it down with paper towel, and then you go back again until you get rid of it, which is what happened with the story that made you find me, was I actually ended up going back because in -10 and snowing, it was having no luck. And I finally got rid of what I started trying to take off in December.
I'm Michael Weisdorf, Chief Executive Officer with the Canadian Jewish News. We've put a lot of effort into trying to engage with the younger audience and the younger demographic, those who haven't really engaged with the CJN recently. They don't realize we're back. They say, I absolutely remember reading this on my Booby and Zadie's dining room table or my parents' den. We're trying to bring the Canadian Jewish News into the 21st century. The Canadian Jewish News is a not-for-profit organization, and we're also a registered journalism organization with the CRA. So we can provide tax receipts for donations at any level. To help support the Canadian Jewish News and help us continue providing free, high-quality journalism for the Jewish community, you can support us at thecjn.ca/donate. Thank you for your support and for being a part of our journey.
do you have to wear a mask and gloves because it's dangerous to spray with the chemicals and what have you?
I probably should. I don't. I'm doing it outside. And I'm not inhaling too much by the way of fumes. It's like nail polish remover. It has a smell to it. As a matter of fact, the funny thing was I alluded to the Fringe Festival, and I'm sure your listeners know what a Fringe Festival is. So Lisa Lewis, and I'm shouting her out because she's Indigenous, non-Jewish, and one of the biggest supporters of our community, sent me pictures of 5 or 6 tags she saw in the Market District. And I went there and over 3 hours, and the only negative comment I have received while cleaning spray paint was right in front of a Fringe venue when I wasn't far from the ticket takers who said, "Oh, that smells terrible." I said, "I'm sorry." They said, No, don't mind. That was about as negative as I've gotten, thank God, as I've gone around. Although I almost never go out by myself. I always want someone watching my back, depending on what part of town, especially, and what time of day. I've had non-Jewish friends join me. And again, I just do this because it's got to get done, not to be on the CJN's podcast.
Understood. You told us earlier about like the parking, the meters where someone made the P into Palestine. When you take that stuff down, like, is there sort of a grid that you say, okay, this is good, I'll leave it? this is hate, I have to take it off, even if maybe the other side wouldn't like it too much.
Yeah, in my mind, and no one's perfect, but in my mind, I think about what 90% of my community would find offensive might be the wrong word, but certainly not appreciate. Every time you see that, it often comes along with a map of what they call Palestine, our cousins, as we like to call them, which is the entire contiguous Israel. So I look at that as being not appropriate. I have taken off Free Palestine from Hamas when people have written it below as well, even though I kind of chuckle at that one, but I take the whole thing off. I'm trying not to set a double standard in that sense, and we're not going to get into politics today. I mean, in an ideal world, I'd love there to be a separate Palestinian state. I don't think the ideal world exists, so we'll keep away from that for the moment. But, there's certainly things that cross the board no matter what. So when we talk about the other graffiti I've removed, it's typically things that are negative about some other ethnic community or group of people if I see it. So right along with the Free Palestine was another F word with indigenous title on it. Certainly that's offensive. Although right below it was also Free Native Reserves. I took the whole thing off. It was on one pillar. I took off one right near City Hall that talked about Winnipegs, which I figured would offend our people in blue who, at least in Winnipeg, have been working really well with us. One or two of them that are not nice things about people of certain genders and their promiscuity for the sake of argument. But yeah, I'm primarily anti-Jewish or anti-Zionist, which some people would claim is not anti-Jewish.
How is your work being received by the people who put it up? And I'm saying neo-Nazis too. There are neo-Nazis there who are doing this?
There may be. I have not heard or seen any negative feedback towards me anywhere. As an example, I'm not sure if I sent you I'm looking at it on my screen at one of the high schools where they had an F Jews with a swastika in a bathroom. That got to me because someone else saw it, and I called up that school and said, would you like me to come? Oh, no, we'll take care. And they did take care of that. That obviously is offensive to many people. So back to the swastikas. So the only swastika I had seen publicly was the one on the shul. But then in October, there were a couple of swastikas in an area called Charleswood. It's in West Winnipeg. A lot of the immigrants from South America actually ended up living in Charleswood. So I heard about it, and I went to take off from a community center. And by the time I got there, it was off. And then I heard about some more a couple weeks later, and I went and I took it off. And I noticed the letters MKY, and it scratched my head a bit. Then towards November, and there was more with MKY, and that's where this all got hot and heavy, if you want to call it that. And at that point, I reached out, and one of my non-Jewish friends said to me, I think they're associated with Maniac Murder Cult, which is a wonderful name for an Eastern European neo-Nazi group, which recently had the head of one of the Eastern European entities was arrested in New York City for conspiring to kill Jews and anyone else he didn't like. So at that point, first of all, I taken off 3 or 4 of them in November, and I was having trouble. It was around Remembrance Day because I was driving and I saw them everywhere. So I called up one of my friends in the police department. One of the other volunteer things I do is help with community safety. So it said, I think there's a problem here. And they started investigating. And then when they got hit again in December at that community center, the non-Jewish president of the community center was very upset that this anti-Semitism was in his community. I said, this isn't just anti-Semitism. This could be hate of everyone who's not basically a white cisgender male. And they said, tell me more. And that's how I'm here today. So they did arrest one 19-year-old individual. The police have not publicly, and nor have I asked them privately, not that they would necessarily tell me, if this is indicative of Maniac Murder Cult actually getting a footing in Winnipeg, or if this is some poor disturbed youth who thought he'd get their attention.
Or was radicalizing, yeah.
Or was radicalizing. And really, my whole modus operandi for telling the media, let's talk about taking away hate. And that, unfortunately, has turned me into a minor celebrity. I don't, I'm not trying to be disingenuous. I don't need celebrity status. I just need the hate gone. Now I've actually had a minor thought towards turning this into something a little more formal, instead of just my company supplying me with the expensive part of it and me supplying the labor, because I've had so many people. I was at a Jets game a week or two ago, and someone handed me their business card and said, can I help you take graffiti off?
Who's supposed to do this if it's on city property versus like private property? It's illegal, right? It's like vandalism or whatever, isn't it?
Graffiti is illegal. There are graffiti removal, the tag team, I think they call them or something in Winnipeg.
But this is like City Hall runs it.
City Hall would run
Property standards of the city.
They can't keep
department.
up. And they will do that on city property, and they might do it on private property if they have the time and the resources. But it is the property owner's responsibility. Ironically, I got an email from the owner of this really large property management company about a inappropriate piece of graffiti on one of his buildings that he manages on Christmas Day. And I said, I happen to be going to a friend's house for dinner. And I went and I stopped by there and took it off. So I was kind of laughing. It's like their budget's 20 times mine and they've got me working for them for free. But that wasn't the point.
What was the graffiti? Can you say?
It was a Star of David and something about money bags. So it was really just the Jewish trope of the Jews control the money. It wasn't as negative unless you read into the trope and understand it.
We understand what that is. There's a lot worse now facing our community around, which is actually really sad. But go back to your collection. So you did 100. How many have you done now? Or you're not keeping?
I've only done a couple since then. It's minus 25 most of the time here. The taggers aren't out. My chemical doesn't work very well. So not a lot in the winter, but unfortunately I have a feeling that come April, I'll be busy again and running around on Sunday afternoons and Thursday nights and 5 a.m. on my way to work. Those I do myself.
I'm hoping that won't happen. Do you know who's doing it? Because some of the handwriting maybe you notice is the same or the design is the same. Do the police know?
No, I mean, I can only have a supposition that the same people who are out every Saturday afternoon screaming about genocide are the people who are doing some of this graffiti. But I can't tell you for sure. I know by the Misericordia Hospital, we did ask, do you have any camera aiming in that particular location? Because you'd find me every few days wiping off what someone else put on. And they didn't, just because of where it's located. It's just, for them, it's not a strategic location to place. But no, we don't know for sure who's doing it. I really think it's some of the people who are pro-Palestinian, obviously. But in the West End there, I really think it's just pure anti-Semitism. Because they're not doing stuff about Palestine, they're doing stuff about Jews. And unfortunately, as you said, it's become normalized. At this point, I'm like, that's not so bad, when it really is. But in my mind, as you say, I've seen worse, And it's funny, not funny, but I went to Toronto. My niece got married. My wife and I were in a hotel. I figured I should have brought my spray because I was near U of T and I was seeing tons of it.
Yeah. Do you take stickers off too, or just the actual graffiti that's like a paint or a marker or whatever?
There's stickers about genocide. There's stickers about Palestine. I've taken them off. There were some large posters, some of them with really nasty tropes on them, like the rat with the Star of David. Where possible, I try to remove those, but some of those have been glued on with so much glue it's impossible. At one time, I did have a can of spray paint with me in case I wanted to spray over something, and I've just decided I refuse to add spray paint because that is adding the negative. So if I can take away the negative and leave a blank space, that's fine. But I refuse to add to the negativity in any way, even by spray painting over it.
Well, like you said, this might be a whole new career, sadly. Have the police or anybody ever told you to stop? Because you're going to get in trouble?
No, far from it. They don't mind, and they know me. I'm known to police, but not in a bad way. And actually, before I took off that very first Jews Kill Babies, on the way there, I had a friend of mine call someone because I didn't have their number. Ironically, they're in charge of snow clearing for the city of Winnipeg, amongst other things. They're from Israel. So called them up and said, anything wrong? And they said, if you get into trouble, just tell them my name. And then I approved it.
You have protectia.
Absolutely. Protectia from an Israeli, even better. And I've actually tied myself in a bit with end Jewish hatred because that's what I'm trying to do. We're all trying to do that, but that's what I'm trying to do here.
I wish that you go out of business, actually.
I'd love nothing better than to go out of business. 100%.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, made possible in part by the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Now, many Canadian cities and towns have also seen an explosion of anti-Jewish graffiti since October 7th. In the Toronto area, authorities are still searching for 2 suspects who recently broke into the office of La Brioute, a kosher caterer. They ransacked the place and they sprayed Free Gaza and FU I'll say it anyway, FUC, you know what, Jews all over the walls. Meanwhile, Toronto police charged an employee with the pro-Israel media monitoring group Honest Reporting with 17 counts of mischief after several suspects were accused of spraying anti-Palestinian graffiti, including F Gaza, in Yiddish writing on bus shelters and planters and other city property last November. Robert Walker's lawyer, Leora Shemesh, told reporters her client's case has been politicized, and Walker's been harassed at his home after a pro-Palestinian journalist published his address. His next court date is February 21st. Our show is produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman. The executive producer is Michael Freeman, and our music is by Dov Beck-Levine. Thanks for listening.
Right after October 7th, the CJN really had a challenge of how we were going to cover what we knew was going to be the most important story, likely of our journalistic careers. And we think about, what are the stories that we uniquely can tell? We have strong and deep ties and relationships in the community. We can go to the same event that everyone else, all the mainstream media will cover, but we will cover it differently. We'll cover it smarter because we have an understanding of the context and the nuance of the communities that we've worked in. My name is Lila Sarek, and I'm the news editor at the Canadian Jewish News. The CJN wants to continue to cover important stories across the country and important stories in Israel as well. And we can only do it with your help. Visit thecjn.ca/donate to support our work. And if you live in Canada, you will also receive a Canadian tax receipt. Thank you.